diving, also known as apnea diving, where refers to the activity of diving underwater without the use of breathing apparatus such as scuba gear or snorkels. It involves holding one's breath and descending to various depths, either for recreational purposes, spearfishing, military operation, or as a competitive sport. In the context of diving, as a diver descends deeper into the water, the hydrostatic pressure increases due to the weight of the water column above. The increase in pressure follows a linear relationship with depth, with an increase of 1 atm for every 10 meters of seawater. Due to the partial state of immersion, physiological changes are already taking place even before the dive, while the diver is floating at the surface. These changes include fluid change, regional blood flow redistribution, altered cardiopulmonary hemodynamics, and changes in autonomic activity. The mammalian diving response that a vagally mediated increase in parasympathetic nerve activity that lowers heart rate and sympathetically mediated vasoconstriction of peripheral vascular beds to help reduce oxygen consumption. Next is cardiac dyssynchrony. Divers occasionally experience cardiac dyssynchrony during a dive. The mechanism underlying this irregular heart signal likely involves a conflict between the parasympathetic mediated bradycardia and sympathetically driven tachycardia. Passive descent in phases allows divers to conserve energy, reduce air consumption, and enjoy the tranquility of descending into the underwater world. When divers make large thoracic movement at depth, the risk of lung injury may be increased because the correspondingly elevated alveolar pressure proportionally determine the degree of tissue stress.
The third phase of a dive is reaching maximum depth. A study has been conducted at the Y40, the Deep Joy pool in Italy, to examine the effects of increased depth on arterial oxygen levels in breath hold divers. The study found that at a depth of 40 meters, the high hydrostatic pressure led to a significant increase in the basal pressure of arterial oxygen. The inability to experience this condition could be attributed to ventilation perfusion mismatching and an intrapulmonary shunt caused by atelectasis, which is the closure of airways. The acute risk of diving during this phase is nitrogen narcosis, typified by symptoms like transient amnesia, which can arise during breath hold dive beyond around 70 to 90 meters. The bottom depth and duration of exposure at extreme depth appears to be the key factors in the development of narcosis. The next phase will be ascent, where in this phase divers may experience involuntary breathing movements, which are diaphragmatic contractions that mark the physiologic breakpoint and the struggle phase, depending on the duration of the dive. IBMs have been proven to temporarily relieve cardiac output constraints and enhance brain oxygenation, particularly with increasing lung volumes. However, because lung compression decreases during ascent, IBMs can cause excessive pressure changes in the thoracic and pulmonary areas. It may lead to pulmonary barotrauma, also known as lung squeeze. Hemoptysis after a dive also has been linked to IBMs. In this phase as well, there will be spleen contraction. It acts as a reservoir capable of releasing blood with a greater hematocrit content into circulation. It also plays an important role in aiding in the prevention of hypoxic loss of consciousness. In humans, reducing spleen volume by 18 to 35% while holding one's breath led to a 2 to 6% rise in hematocrit. The last phase of the dive is the last 10 meters of ascent. The final 10 meters of ascent pose risk with shallow water blackout and hypoxia syncope. According to modeling studies and static tests in breath hold divers, oxygen pressures during emerging from deep dive can be as low as 25 to 29.7 millimeters of mercury, near the limit of consciousness when partial pressure of oxygen goes below 20 millimeters of mercury. Diving animals' brains and oxygen metabolism have special adaptations that allow them to endure hypoxia and sustain consciousness in harsh diving circumstances.
Surface protocol. In competitive breath-holding diving, a successful dive is determined not only by the depth reached but also by the diver's ability to demonstrate control upon surfacing. The specific requirements may vary, but typically divers need to remove their facial equipment, signal OK with their hand and verbally state I am OK while keeping their airways above the water. These measures are intended to show that the diver is conscious and in control after the dive. Risk of lung squeeze. Lung injury known as lung squeeze can occur in breath-hold divers due to various factors such as hydrostatic induced compression and decompression, centralization of blood volume, hypertension, exertion, and hypercapnic hypoxia. Next is risk of DCS or Taravana. Decompression sickness can occur in breath-hold divers, particularly those engaging in repetitive dives and extreme depth. DCS refers to the pathology of nitrogen bubble formation in the body due to rapid ascent and insufficient time for nitrogen clearance. Brain biomarkers and cognitive function. Following maximal static apneas and blackouts, increases in blood-brain barrier and astrocyte damage markers have been observed. Sustained diving has been associated with elevated oxidative state and increased level of cortisol. And then, lung function. Divers employ techniques such as passive thoracic stretches and active lung stretches to enhance deep diving performance and increase lung compliance. In the conclusion, this review has examined the physiological responses during the various phases of a dive and the challenges posed by hyperbaria. However, further longitudinal and cross-sectional studies are necessary to better understand the potential clinical consequences of apnea diving.